You are listening to the Motherhood Podcast, episode number 73. I'm your host, Emily Carney. We at Motherhood believe that there's no way to be a perfect mom, but many ways to be a good one. Our content is judgment-free within the context of evidence-based research. As many of you know, in addition to being a mom, which is my favorite job in the world, and also hosting this podcast, I'm an attorney and I own my own law firm, The Carney Firm. I specialize in being general outside counsel for small businesses and also intellectual property matters such as registering a trademark and counseling and other intellectual property matters. I love helping small businesses, and I'm also a business consultant for them as well. So if you're a mama and you own your own business, I would be so honored if you would consider reaching out to me for a free consultation. You could reach me at emily@thecarneyfirm.com. And you can also find me on Instagram at Attorney Emily. I'm also a mom-friendly lawyer. Some of my clients are mothers. I'm a mother. And so if you have a loud child in the background on a phone call with me, it does not matter to me whatsoever. As long as you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. And for a disclaimer, by law, I'm required to say that this is attorney advertising and also is not legal advice. Elise, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to the show.
Hi, Emily. I am thrilled to be here. I'm a longtime listener, so I am so excited to chat with you today.
I'm excited as well, and I'm so glad, too, that we made it to this recording date because I know that you're 38 weeks plus pregnant and a few days change, and so I'm glad that I didn't get an email this morning saying you're in labor, although I'm sure you wish that you were in labor right now.
Yes, we're very ready. I still have some organizing to do, so if she could give me a couple more days, that would be great.
Yes, exactly. So I'm glad that we made this recording date. And I've been following you a while on social media, and I've always just been so impressed because you run your own digital marketing agency while being a mother. And I know your husband's super busy too with his career. So I'm so excited to introduce you to all of our listeners so they can get to know about you. So maybe you could just start off by talking about your background. How did you get to where you are today?
Absolutely. So I started Ringlet in 2017. We are a digital marketing agency with a unique approach to helping women entrepreneurs scale their business. So we do focus on women-owned businesses. And the way I got to starting Ringlet was a long and winding road. I studied philosophy in college. And so I'd like to say if I became an entrepreneur, anyone can, because I have a background in philosophy. But the reason I studied philosophy was because I just loved people and really understanding how people think and approach the world and their lives. And after that, I went into a master's program for communications at Johns Hopkins and graduated in 2015. During that time, I worked for some nonprofits and was also in the startup world. I was working like 3 jobs, trying to make ends meet, living between DC and New York City. And then I got engaged. And my husband and I were trying to discern what to do with our lives, where we were going to settle, when we were going to get married. And I had a choice between continuing work as a freelancer and starting a company. And I decided to go ahead and start a company. I don't know what made me think I was qualified to do that, but just blind confidence and really seeing a need with women-owned businesses in the city. I was in DC at the time, where these women had amazing flower shops and they were selling jewelry and they just had incredible services or products, but they weren't quite sure how to scale and get past kind of like the friends and family stage of business. And I had a background in marketing, so I thought, why not? I could help them with specifically social media and email marketing. So I started just continuing freelance in 2016. We got married in 2017. But at the beginning of 2017, I went ahead and incorporated Ringlet and made it official. It was still mostly just me doing work. But I had an intern from my alma mater who was very patient with me as I figured out how to run a business. And then I started to bring on some part-time employees in 2018 and we were able to bring on my business partner, Claire Conway, in the summer of 2018. She became a partner in 2020. And we now have a team of 15, and we are all located on the East Coast. We are all virtual right now. We work between DC, Philadelphia, and New York City, and it's a lot of fun. I'm working from my new house. We just moved about a month ago. I now actually have an office, which is exciting. Before I was working in the family living room. And yeah, that's like the very high level journey. Of course, there's been lots of ups and downs. We survived a pandemic. We've hired and fired people. We've navigated difficult client relationships, but all while really focusing on our why, which is helping women find financial freedom through business.
I like that why a lot. And I think a lot of our listeners can relate to that because, as you know, that a lot of companies in America aren't very mom friendly. It's more centered around a man who can go into the office and doesn't have all the childcare responsibilities. And so I do see a lot of women trying to start their own businesses or running their own businesses. Just one reason, so they can have that flexibility, right? So they can have, be at home with their kids more, be a little bit more present to their children, and then still bringing in some sort of income. So I really like that. You mentioned that you had a background in marketing. How did you get interested in that aspect of it, and what is your background in it?
Sure. So yes, I switched over from education in philosophy to education in communications and marketing. I really had no idea what I was doing when I chose marketing. I wasn't really sure. I knew that I wanted to work in a creative field, that I wanted to work in relationships. However, I had a really difficult time finding my path. I ended up stalking women on LinkedIn that I knew were within my network. And I looked at their resumes and their education, and I said, I really admire what they're currently doing. Let's backtrack and see what their education was, what degrees they had, what experience and work they had. And I just reached out to them and really interviewed a lot of, at least, I think 15 women that they very generously gave their time to helping me figure out what aspects of their own career that I really admired and what I could take from their experience moving forward. And I decided on digital marketing.
I like that a lot. And I like that you also have said that you really didn't know what you were doing and you just kind of went with it. I know that for a lot of people who I have spoken with, that one thing that holds some people back who really want to start a business or, not even necessarily start a business, but maybe just kind of start a hobby or a side hustle, something like that, is that they don't really know that much about the field. But from what from speaking to women who do own successful businesses, that the vast majority of them really didn't know what they were doing before they got into it, right? And that's something that's very impressive, just kind of like learn on the go and, done. I think that what's the saying is like done over perfect or something, like just get it done, like valuing getting something done over being perfect, that's more important. And Absolutely. That seems to be a common theme with not just women who own businesses, but honestly, like most people who I've spoken with. Actually, now I was just telling Elise before this recording that I'm not a morning person. And so we're recording this in the morning. And so if I'm kind of like scatterbrain, I have had one cup of coffee.
You're doing great.
Yeah. So I'm like, as I'm talking, like, oh, that reminds me of this. And so hopefully it's not too scattered brain.
No, but I appreciate the candid conversation.
A few months ago, I was actually having a conversation and I didn't even know it with this woman. And it wasn't until after the conversation that my husband, he's like, oh, do you know who that is? She and her husband run so-and-so. Is like this really big local corporation. They do very well for themselves financially. So she was very nice. She was an older woman. So I was chatting with her and cause I have my own law firm. And so I was just kind of connecting with her on how we both run our own businesses. Not that I was comparing them at all, but obviously like just trying to pick her brain. And she just was saying how, yeah, we just went where the clients were, even if we didn't really know anything about this particular line of business, then if a client needed that done, then we would become experts in that field.
Figure it out.
Figure it out, become experts in the field for that client. And obviously, like, I didn't know who she was until after I was talking with her. And then once my husband told me, I was like, oh my gosh, if she and her husband can just figure it out as they go and they're so successful, then that's kind of, should be the poster child, right? Like, I can do that. You can do that. Why can't anyone do that? Right. Again, like it's not like she was being negligent about it either, though, because they became experts in that field, but anyone can become an expert.
They put in the work.
Field with it. Yeah. If you put in enough time and research and education and all that. So anyway, when you were talking about that, it just reminded me of that conversation.
Oh, yes.
And
that's
how
great.
It seems to be a common theme, right?
Yes. When I'm talking to women who are looking to start their own business, I really love to communicate that they belong within the space of business. I think sometimes we have this idea that being a business owner means striving to be on the cover of Forbes or reaching a million bajillion dollars in revenue and having all these employees, and this very traditional view of business. And what I see happening within a lot of women who are online right now is this revolution that Ringlet is trying to help lead towards breaking down that barrier to business, that even if you are selling on Etsy or just, I hate using the word just, but just you opening your website to sell locally or going to your local marketplace and selling jam that you're making, that all of that effort is worthy of being poured into, that it's worth spending your time on because it's cultivating your own gifts and talents. It's helping you become the person that you're meant to be. And that doesn't mean that it's not valid because it's not making you a millionaire. We like to say at Ringlet, we like to say at Ringlet that not every woman needs to be a CEO, but she can have a very successful business.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because I mean, even if you think about it in terms of raw numbers, in addition to the fulfillment that you were talking about, because a lot of people who do start their own businesses tend to do it in the field that they're most passionate about. But aside from being fulfilled in the passionate part, if you just put a dollar figure on it, right, just think of maybe there's a stay-at-home mom and she doesn't have to produce any income, but maybe her passion will make 50,000, maybe it'll make 100,000, maybe 150,000. Like, $150,000 extra a year isn't a millionaire, but I don't know a single person that wouldn't make a significant difference in your life, right? From a monetary aspect. So that's something that you don't have to, I don't know. I guess in our culture that I've noticed from when I was very young is it seems like a lot of people don't think something is worthy unless you're going to be like the best at it or if you're going to change the world, like kind of be the superhero type mentality.
Yes.
And that's something that I struggled with initially in my career because going into law, obviously there's a lot of people who are, they're very idealistic, right? And so when you try to transfer the ideal to the practical, there's a lot of times a lot of disappointment, right? You think in your head, well, I want to be the lawyer who changes all the laws and makes them all better. It's like, well, like realistically speaking, there's not really anyone who can do that, right? So,
there's merit to being really good at what you do and striving for excellence without having to put the pressure on yourself to be the top of your industry or to seek out these accolades that in the end, I would rather have a really meaningful relationship with my daughter as opposed to, I don't know, being on the next 30 list of 40 under 40 or something. And I think just really understanding where our values lie help us to navigate our careers and understanding where our efforts and energy needs to go.
I like that a lot. Yeah. And I recently just discovered too, most of those magazine covers and all those lists, they're just bought with by a PR person. So I'm like, okay.
It's true. It's true. Yep.
It's not like you've made
Yes.
it necessarily just because you're on the cover of something. It just means you
Right.
picked someone to be on there, right?
Right.
So what do you tell women who do struggle with that? Because it sounds like you're pretty well versed and, you not being basically like telling women that they are worth it and they don't have to be at the top of their industry. Like, what's the pep talk you kind of give to women?
What is the pep talk that I give myself? So I try to I give it to other women, also myself. Well, I'd like to start by saying I'm really interested in the history of feminism. And I think we are seeing right now this new fourth wave of feminism, especially after the pandemic, of women seeking integration in their lives. They're realizing that a very traditional 9-to-5 job maybe doesn't align with what they want for their family and for their lives, doesn't align with their values. And they are wanting to show up with their full femininity. And that means that they want to have kids. They want to be able to take their kids to school, but they also do want to be able to go on those work trips or to have a really fulfilling career. And I think the internet has been really helpful in making that happen. But working from home, I think as moms that we've realized through the pandemic, it's also still challenging. Going into office sometimes sounds very luxurious to me because I get to be in a quiet cubicle or at a quiet desk without kids crying outside my door.
Drink your coffee without your kids trying to spill it, right? Still
exactly.
Hot in the office.
Yes, exactly. So we're at this like really interesting precipice of women on like reevaluating what work means to them. And if you are looking to start a business, the pep talk that I would give is just to have confidence that no one really knows what they're doing. Even I've worked with really high level business owners, people who have national brands, and they all have shortcomings. No one knows all of the answers. And so having confidence is so much easier said than done. But having confidence in the gifts and talents that you're offering through your services and your products, know that it's needed in the world. And it's worth, as we said before, it's worth pouring time and effort into.
Right. I love that a lot. And then you can always find your niche too, right? It's not like being the best is so hard to quantify or qualify too, because no one can be you, right? So the combination of you plus your talent is very unique, and maybe someone just might prefer working with you because of your personality or how you approach everything. So I definitely think that's really true. Well, I wanted to go back a little bit to how, you managed to do all of this, because you kind of glossed over it a little bit in the beginning. And I know that I'm just because I've been following you for a while, so I know how impressive you are and how much you've had to put effort into all of this. Your husband, he's went to law school during all of this too. Like, how did that all work? Explain how you made that happen.
Sure. So just to break down the timeline a little bit more, I started Ringlet in the beginning of 2017 as far as incorporating goes. As I mentioned, I was doing freelance work before then. Then my husband and I got married August of 2017, and he had been teaching previously before that. He actually continued to teach full-time during law school, but then started law school a week after we got married. So we bought a house, started law school, and got married all within the same month, 2017, and just dove right in. And I have to say, we were married for 3.5 years before we had our first. And that time really did allow for me to get Ringlet to the place where it is now. I developed a lot of relationships because he would teach during the day and then drive to school. He went to Catholic University of America for law school at night school. He would get there at like 4 p.m. and then be there till 8 or 9 at night. I then had the evenings to myself to work on the company or to go to happy hours to meet clients or to go to events to, talk Ringlet up. that was a very fruitful time. We were both working really hard. And we just knew that that was a season of life where we maybe didn't get to see each other a ton. We actually spent the most time together during the pandemic when we were both working from home in 2020, which was nice. And then we had our first in 2021. It was March. And it was definitely a transition. I think we were both 30 when our first was born, and I was blessed enough to have an amazing team where I could take time off from Ringlet. So I took about 3 months off and was definitely checking in here or there with my investors and with my business partner. But for the most part, I really was able to step away from work and spend time with my daughter and adjust. And of course, it sounds cliche, but everything changes when you have a kid. So I really had to reevaluate how I wanted to work once I had Rosemary in my sphere in our lives. And I have still been working really hard. I don't I wish I had some formula. I think a lot of moms wish that, we'd have this like perfect formula where it's, 20 hours a week working, and then you get to spend time with your kids, and then you have a someone who helps clean your home, or you have a nanny. And like, I would love that if someone could be like, here's the help you need, and here's the hours, and like all of it will work together. It'll all be easy. But it's not. As moms, we know that. And we know that our kids are constantly changing. So we've had to really evaluate our work every month, it depends on how Rosemary's sleeping, how she's eating, like how, there's just, if I'm pregnant or not. So that has been, I think, probably one of the bigger mental load that parenthood that I didn't expect, which was like constantly adjusting schedules and our focus as a family month to month as our daughter has grown, and as I got pregnant and have been growing our second daughter. So it's a long tangent, but I feel like I could talk to you about this for a while.
Yeah. Do you feel like it was easier to evaluate your workload because you do own your business?
Yeah. I think as a business owner, you have this duality where I can have more flexibility because I can go to a doctor's appointment at 2 p.m. on a Thursday, but then I do have to really focus after I put Rosemary to bed to get other work done. And as a business owner, you have the pressure of running payroll every 2 weeks for other people. So as mentioned, we have 15 people on the team. And I really take their livelihood and their well-being into, just thinking about that a lot into consideration. So there is a lot of pressure as a business owner to take care of your team and make sure that they're okay. But also, there's definitely beauty in having that flexibility and setting my hours. And I decided that I wanted to take those 3 months off. That's why I created this business, so that I could have that flexibility for maternity leave. And now I'm taking it 2 years in a row now. And I have another team. Yesterday was actually, the same team, but my team again is going to be stepping it up while I'm on maternity leave. Yesterday was my last day working before going on maternity leave. So we are moving ahead and they are ready to go. I have full confidence in their talent, and that's been a real blessing to see. One of the my favorite things as a business owner is really being able to cultivate my employees and their gifts and their talents, and seeing them grow as professionals.
I saw a meme recently. I think it was, you quit your 9-to-5 job to own your own business, and then you work 24/7.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And we're definitely entering a new season where I have been working a lot in the last year. But I am very well aware that after this new baby's born, I'll have 2 under 2, and I will really have to evaluate how I'm working. And I feel very lucky that I have that space to figure that out and to craft that for myself.
You mentioned some help, or you were saying that it would be easier, but obviously I agree with you that it's, there's no there's no map or blueprint for motherhood, especially like for each individual person, because it's so different. But have you noticed anything that has helped make it easier? You mentioned having help or maybe having help.
Yeah, definitely. Stepping out of that traditional business model where I think at least I grew up with this mentality that I come from an entrepreneurship focused family, entrepreneurship family, where it's like this is your business and you grow it and everything lives and dies by your success. And I really had to shift that mindset to, it is my company. I'm the founder. However, this really is my team members' company as well. My success is their success. Their success is my success. And it takes a village to raise a child. It also takes a village to run a successful company. So Ringlet is as much of my company as it is my employees. And it has been really beautiful to see that when you ask people to step up, they usually do. And it allows them growth in their own personal and professional lives. And I've seen in my own personal life, the beauty of having Rosemary is how much my family members love her, and just seeing them blossom as people, as they've fallen in love with her and interacted with her. And I do have help. So I always like to say that because I think women should talk more about childcare. So I'm very lucky that my cousin started watching Rosemary when she was 2.5 months old. So that was like mid-June of 2021. And she is with us 3.5 days a week. And then I also have my mom close by, and Hunter's aunt is my husband's aunt is also close by. He did graduate law school, by the way. I forgot to mention that. So he graduated last year. He graduated last year. We actually just found out this past month that he passed the bar for Maryland.
Oh, nice.
So we are, we're done that journey, and then he will transition to a new job. But all this transition has been, we've just relied so heavily on family. And I have had to take a deep breath and kind of learn some humility in allowing other people to take over tasks in my life that I normally would love to be the only one who's folding laundry. I love to be the only one who's cleaning up my house. But we also have a wonderful cleaning lady who helps us with those tasks. She's a family friend. So yes, I am an advocate for receiving as much help as your budget allows for. And it's really been amazing to be in relationship with everyone who is helping us. I think the more vulnerable I've been with asking for help, the more that I've grown in relationship with those people I've received help from. And there's been a real beauty in that.
I like that a lot. It's funny that we all feel guilty about having that help and asking for it, when really, I mean, I don't even know where to begin on this. I feel like this could be an entirely different podcast episode, but whenever people have like the quote traditional mom in mind, right? It's mostly American based. It's American kind of pioneer woman type who does it all herself. And that's not how it is in the rest of the world. And it's not even really how it was before the pioneer type woman, right? It's just as you said, it was a village. And when you go to a lot of other countries and cultures, it still is a village. Like I know a lot of the Asian cultures still have that village, like the individual family units, they live with their extended family members, their grandparents, maybe sometimes aunts and uncles. And it's not shameful to have all that help. It's just a way of living. And that's really how all of humanity has been for thousands of years. But I think we just kind of get stuck in our own bubble of, oh, well, the pioneer American woman could do it when, she was moving out west and she just did it all, stuff like that. I'm like, okay, but that's a very narrow part of history. So anyway, I know that's like a whole nother tangent.
No,
but I don't know why
I
that's always like the quote, air quote, like traditional woman. I'm like, I mean, that's one type of traditional woman, but.
Yes, and that only really began in the 1950s. So there's less than 100 years ago. I think a lot about my great-grandmother on my mom's side. Her name was Elizabeth. She had 3 boys and 3 girls, and she did have a lot of help. She had, I don't know, she had a nanny, she had a housekeeper, and it was not seen as shameful that was happening. It was just a recognition that this is what it takes to raise a family. And I don't know why that recognition went away or that it became shameful to need help. But I really would love to bring that back into our cultural zeitgeist of we just recognizing it takes more than just one mom to raise a whole family, to feed everyone, clothe everyone, bathe everyone, make sure that they're emotionally stable and doing well and educating them. It really does take so many people to accomplish that. And one of my favorite books too is Kirsten Lavensdatter. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or read it, but
what is it called?
Kristen Lavensdatter.
I haven't.
Yes, it was written by Sigrid Undset, and it is about a woman in in Norway. I'm not going to reveal in the Middle Ages, and she has 7 boys, and it's just a beautiful picture of it's amazing trilogy actually. But while she's raising her 7 sons, she is farming and runs a business and is taking care of her sons, but she also has a ton of help. And so, women from ages and ages ago were always working, right? Women have always been working in some capacity. It's very strange, actually, that like we've siloed work and staying at home as a culture. Like that is not what cultures have done in the past, even American culture or cultures around the world of like you're either working or you're not working. Like every woman works. It just looks different from season to season and for individuals and families.
That just reminded me of a quote that I posted on Motherhood. I think it was last year. It's from a book by Carolyn Perez called Invisible Women. But
yes,
there is no such thing as a woman who doesn't work. There is only a woman who isn't paid for her work.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that a lot. And I don't know, it kind of reminds me too, not to get like too controversial, but you saw our post last week on Motherhood, just basically quantifying what goes into motherhood just from a purely monetary aspect. And, I'd love to explore that topic. There seems to be this divide between women who do stay at home, right? And then women who don't stay at home, obviously like the whole working mom versus stay at home mom thing, but then also like quantifying what women do, that it's not, and I mean, in my opinion, it's not devaluing it, right? It's just kind of translating what a woman does into dollar figure, because that's how our economy operates, right? Our whole economy is based on money, GDP, like that's how we measure everything. And I think just trying to put a dollar figure on work that women do or unpaid work does, just I think is important just to highlight, look at all this work that women are doing to quantify it, but not necessarily to say that that's the only value in it. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Well, I do know that you have thoughts on
I do. I was going to say, I do. And so I'll start by saying my mom was a stay-at-home mom she had 4 under 7. I'm the oldest. I have a younger sister and 2 younger brothers. And I would be lying if I didn't say, like, I am definitely trying to navigate how I will raise my kids while working. It's not like I have it figured out. As I mentioned, it's different from season to season because I saw how much work and how much effort and just love was poured into me and my siblings by my mom. My dad, as mentioned, was an entrepreneur and was working a lot as a lawyer. He has his own law firm. And so she really was home a lot with 4 kids, and she did a phenomenal job. So I really believe, like, excuse me, that thanks. Drama of a pregnant lady. Just like constant hydration.
I know. I feel like I'm reliving the last few weeks of pregnancy listening, because I know I was like so
being out of breath.
Yeah.
Yes. Moms are like the foundation of the economy, of culture. There's so much that we, not only do we, birth children, house children in our bodies, birth them and then raise them. But we also are the ones usually who are keeping the household going. I have to say, my husband is fantastic at splitting household duties with me. We have a very open communication style when it comes to what needs to get done as a family, as a household each week. And we usually split up what needs to happen. Now, that does not mean we keep tallies of like, we don't have a scoreboard and it's like Elise 1, Hunter 1. But it's an ebb and flow. Obviously right now, because I'm very pregnant, he's doing a lot of the housework and a lot of laundry and a lot of kid watching. So I'm grateful for that. And this is not a putting down of men. However, this is just recognizing that over history, as you said, women do not usually, there's not value placed on women's work in the home because it is not evaluated to a dollar sign. And I think it is important to do that, not necessarily that to reduce that work to a number, but however, to just shed light, as you're saying, on how much work and effort goes into it. I think I calculated one time my mom's what my mom's salary would have been over the course of 20 years of raising 4 kids and being the chef and chauffeur and doing laundry and housekeeper, and it was like in the millions. Because that's what it's just amazing to see that. And there is value on those. They're seemingly small tasks like putting a baby to bed or soothing someone in the middle of the night, but those are the foundation of raising humans, and humans that then do turn around and contribute to the economy and to our society. I could talk, like I've said, we could talk about this all afternoon. But
I know, I feel like this could be like a whole nother episode. I feel like I have so many thoughts on it as well. But I mean, I guess one analogy that I can think of that is the closest to motherhood is basically like if you think of a gorgeous, beautiful church, right? Because I know a lot of people view, and I do too, as motherhood is sacred, right? It's a sacred thing, and so is a church, right? And if you say, oh, well, this beautiful cathedral cost $10 million to build, just as an example, it's like, are you saying then like, oh my gosh, you can't put a price tag on a cathedral because it's sacred, right? I'm like, okay, no, that's just one part of the cathedral. It's like a fact. It's not the fact, right? Like, let's go inside the church. Let's look at it. Let's admire how beautiful it is, right? And I guess I just feel the same as motherhood. It's like, you can say, well, this is what the price would be. But again, that's just one aspect. And you could view motherhood as kind of like a rainbow, right? Well, that's like one shade color on this whole beautiful rainbow. It's not trying to reduce it to that, but
I think we're just, we're just calling for a more holistic view of motherhood.
Yes, exactly. That's a perfect way of putting it, like more holistic view. So I know that you mentioned too a little bit, and I know we're kind of getting on a tangent, but I feel like at the same time, it is related to everything that you do, since you do help women-owned businesses and you do help women primarily. And, you're navigating this personally with you having your own business. So I feel like it is pretty relevant. I know that you mentioned a little bit earlier in our episode about the history of feminism and how there's a new wave of it. Now, I always get a little bit iffy on talking about feminism because, as I mentioned at the beginning of our episode, we have very different listeners to this podcast. Just full disclosure. So we have like some very, like a lot of our listeners, like, I don't know, I think it's probably pretty split. Like a lot of our listeners are on the far left and a lot are on the far right, like politically. And then same with, religious beliefs. Like we have a lot of like Christian and Catholic listeners. And then we also have a lot of secular listeners. And I think it's so beautiful that all of us can come together and find commonality on these issues, right? So I know that, some of us consider ourselves a form of a feminist, like myself and you, it sounds like. And I know some of our listeners are like, I don't like feminism whatsoever. So I guess, how can we find this commonality for the feminism aspect, or maybe reframing it? Because I know in our minds, having this conversation about helping women is a very feminist part of, it's a part of feminism to us. But for someone else, it might not necessarily be a feminist part. So, how can we find commonality between maybe someone who doesn't necessarily identify themselves as a feminist, but then saying like, this is really important for the dignity and humanity of a woman as a woman, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I identify as a Catholic feminist, which might sound impossible for many of you, but to look at the history of feminism a little more to explain where I'm coming from, the first wave of feminism took place around 1850 to 1920, and that really emerged out of an environment of the urban industrialism and socialist politics. It included the women's suffragette movement as women gained the right to vote in 1920. Those women were very pro-life. They were really focused on providing more resources to women, more resources to moms, and they really saw the right to vote as a major push needed in order to provide them with those resources. And then in 1960s, 70s, of course, we have Gloria Steinman and Bella Abz. I'm not going to be able to pronounce her name correctly. Abzug. They founded the National Women's Political Caucus in 1971. So that's where we really see this sexual revolution coming from. And I think that's why a lot of conservative women, when they think of feminism, they think of that time period where, there's a lot that happened there. I won't go into, but it definitely did bring women's sexuality into a different light than, for better or for worse, than was previously in the, American culture. And then in the early 1990s and late 80s, that's where feminism really focused on sexual harassment in the workplace and a shortage of women in power. And that's what I really think of when I think of feminism. That's the closest to me in age. My mom lived through that. But my mom, as a stay-at-home mom, often mentions how difficult it was for her when she was at a party or some event where a working woman would, kind of look down on her if she said she was a stay-at-home mom. Right. I think that movement really did a lot as far as helping us increase our hourly wage as women. But it really divided women. I think that's where this divide came from between working, quote unquote, working moms who were working outside the home and stay-at-home moms. And now we're in this fourth wave that people debate when it started, but around like 2005, 2007, with the Me Too movement taking off in 2017. But I really like to point to the launch of the Girl Boss movement that was launched by Sophia Amoruso, who is the founder of Nasty Gal, which was a clothing company. And her book, Girl Boss, was published in 2014. And it was the first time that a woman came forward as a founder and loved pink. And she really brought her femininity forward into the business world. And she no longer was wearing these pantsuits, but she was wearing really cute leather jackets and skirts. And she was running a multi-million-dollar company. Now, there are several things that went wrong with the Girl Boss movement, mostly the exclusion of minorities. And we saw the crumbling of a lot of those women-owned unicorns over the last 18 months. Specifically, actually, I just found out that Emily oh my gosh, I'm going to forget her last name, but she was the founder of Glossier. She just stepped down as CEO.
Wow.
And there were several other CEOs and founders that stepped down, notably the founder of The Wing. And a lot of these women were being called out because they had not made their businesses and workplaces as inclusive as they could have. And so now we're in the wake of the fall of the girl boss, where women, as we've talked about, are saying, like, I do not want to be on the cover of Forbes. Maybe I don't want to be working 80 hours a week. I want a more holistic and integrated lifestyle. And I've heard this from women who are moms and women who aren't. But they do, as I said, want to bring their full femininity into the workforce. I've seen one of the really interesting calls that I've seen is to give women the ability and space to work around their cycles each month, for them to like be able to take off without deduction of pay when they have their period or feel like they need to take off because they're not feeling well. But you just recognizing the need to integrate more feminine approach to work in not only entrepreneurship, but also in the more traditional workspace as well. I know that's a tangent, but I don't know if that answered your question, but
it definitely did. I
really
had no idea about that whole history, including like the most, I mean, I heard about girl boss a little bit, but I didn't realize that about that aspect. But I have noticed recently that there's been more a push towards women not trying to be a man, but them being a woman in their own in their own right, like being a woman and then integrating work and life and family and seeing how it looks as a woman, right? Not being defined as basically like I'm sure, I think you mentioned, sounded like you had read the Invisible Women book, but basically not being the default man, right? We don't have to put ourselves, we don't have to have that shoe fit. We don't have to try to force ourselves into being that default man, that we can try to explore what our lives should look like as a woman, right?
I once had a mentor say to me, I want you to, and he was a man, so he's very much ahead of his time, but he said to me, I want you to bring your full self, your full femininity, your full womanhood to work. And that was so empowering because I felt like I did have the freedom to say, oh, I'm going to be late to this meeting because my 1-year-old is just not going down for her nap. Or, oh, I do have to be off video for this call because I'm taking it from bed because I feel sick because I'm pregnant, or whatever it may be. I think, we are really, as women, calling for more freedom and space when it comes to being our full selves in the workspace.
Yeah. And I love that so much that is the movement right now. And it makes it, tying back to basically what you do as your business and what you've done personally in your life. It just connects all the dots to me because it's showing how you can integrate everything and then make it work for both you and your clients.
Yes. And I know that I'd like to say too, I have I don't show up without an understanding of my privilege as a white woman who grew up middle class and had the resources of going to college and grad school and family help. So I don't want to come off as a solution for everyone because I know that not everyone has access to those resources, but that at Ringlet is our focus it's giving the women those resources who may not have access to them.
I love that so much. I mentioned it and before we hit record that I kind of wanted to get a little bit into how finding your identity, which is sort of what you do. Well, not sort of, but what you do with your business.
Yes.
And translate that into motherhood. So maybe, there's a mom listing. Maybe, maybe she doesn't want to start her own business, doesn't want to start her own side hustle, but maybe she can incorporate some of these elements into what is your identity as a mother, right? How to reframe your identity, maybe even rebranding yourself as a mother. And I think it really incorporates into our idea of there's no way to be a perfect mom, but many ways to be a good one, because not each of us are unique. Our life circumstances are unique. We have our own unique personalities and our children and how we mesh with our children and our spouses and what kinds of work. I mean, it's just like every single person really is a snowflake in the sense that they're very unique, right? And how can some moms listening who maybe don't want to start their own business, but they're trying to brand themselves as a mother, maybe what are some tools that they can use to do that?
Absolutely. So the one question that I found really powerful in my own motherhood is, how do I want to show up as a mom? I think as women, we are so focused on serving others, which is in our nature and makes sense as a mom, that sometimes we lose focus of who we are. That's easy to do, right? I think I've gone through that process at least 5 times last year. But it is worth taking a half hour of quiet time I know that's hard to come by, but taking a half hour to reflect on that question of how you want to show up as a mom. And also setting some goals. I think that was really powerful for me. Even at the beginning of my career, was setting larger goals for myself, for our family, and knowing our values to help us guide those goals. So for example, my husband and I, one of our values is community. We really value relationships. We want our kids to grow up within a larger community, and feeling like they have really strong relationships surrounding them. And so one of my goals this year was just simply to meet a handful of more couples. And again, that is a whole year. I gave myself a whole year. This is not like a to-do list. This is not a KPI, but it is setting very simple goals for 6 months to a year that align with your values as a mom and as a family, to help you stay focused on, it is so easy to just get focused on the grind, and you just get worn down by breakfast and the playground and lunchtime and then nap time and changing and, and then repeat. So taking time to really step back and reflect on your current season of motherhood, because as we've said, it's always changing, and setting some goals for yourself, and reflecting on how you've grown. That's really taking stock of maybe what you think you have grown in as a mom, skills and virtues that you've developed, but also where could you improve, and what you want to work on as a wife and mom moving forward.
I love that so much. That leads very well into the last question that I know that you're familiar with, that I always ask all of our guests, which is, one is an example of a time that you realize that there's no way to be a perfect mom, but many ways to be a good one.
Yes, I think the times that I have realized that is when I give myself grace to just be and accept the situation as is. As women, we really tend to place a lot of pressure on ourselves that I should be doing XYZ. I should be able to keep a house completely perfectly clean. I should be able to stay up on laundry. I should be able to cook an amazing meal. And sometimes, most of the time, all of that does not happen. This comes most into focus for me when I'm usually on a business call and I don't have help around and I am watching Rosemary and I have to let her destroy the kitchen or watch some TV or take apart the toy bin and just create chaos. And I just have to sit there and breathe through it and be like, yep, I'm just going to focus on this call, focus on making eye contact with her as much as possible, trying to do 2 things at once, and just accepting the moment, accepting the season, and not putting blame or shame or pressure on myself to have it any other way.
I think someone recently told me that, you only have the toys, like the toy bins and all that for really the first, I don't know, maybe 5 to 8 years of their lives, because then after that, they don't really play. I mean, they still have their toys, but not all those little kid toys.
Yes.
And then that really made me sad, and then appreciate the toys, you're only going to have those toys for a short period of your of your life, and then you're going to miss them. So
that's a good perspective. That's good perspective to have.
I love that so much. Well, thanks again, Elise, for coming on our show. I'm so glad that we can make this happen and that you made it to our recording date. And now you can have the baby. No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. I know. I was like, girl, just hold off until the Motherhood podcast. And then then you can come. Yes. Hopefully she'll give us a little bit more time. And then we're ready to go. Ready to welcome her. But thank you so much for having me, Emily. This was a joy.
Yes. Thank you so much, Elise. I really appreciate it.